Hello, good afternoon. It's such a beautiful summery day. I thought, okay, I'll sit in front of the camera today with the background of the landscape. And it almost feels like Hawaii. So I have my Kona Big Wave beer. um, I just I was thinking about how after Richard passed, how in some way it made me a better version of myself. And I'm not sure how that happened or why. I can only say that um, I remember after learning that he died, I felt this overwhelming love inside of me. And it was like a kind of what they describe as unconditional love. Um, and the first thing, not the first thing, but one of the things I did after learning that Richard had passed, and I was in Maui when he passed, and um, that was really hard on me not being there. And I have asked, as I said in many of my videos, uh, a kind of forgiveness because I have been carrying this weight of guilt that I should not have left on that flight. And I've explained that in other videos, and I'm not going to go through that again. Um, it came down the way it came down, and maybe it was supposed to be that way, where I was not supposed to see Richard in after he passed, and maybe he wanted it that way. I'm not sure. I know I tried to get home, and there were obstacles that kept me from getting back sooner. Um, but I was in a really bad. I'm still, grieving, as I said in my video last night. There's not a day that goes by that I don't cry at different times. Today I cried about 4 times. Um, and it just happens. I'll see an image of him, and that's it. That's all it takes in my mind is an image, and then the tears come welling up, and I'll think of him for an example sitting on his chair. And I remember before I left, he was sleeping a lot, and I remember thinking that's not a good sign uh, when when uh, when someone is sleeping most of the time. And he was in his chair and he was sleeping, and I just had this image today of him being in that chair sleeping, and that's all it took was for I just started crying. um, and it's going to be that way for a long time. People that have lost their beloved life companions, whether they're young or older, it's if you think that the pain is less when you get older, you're really wrong. Um, uh, it's especially because you've been with that person for half your life, and but I remember it must have been like a few days after learning that Richard had passed, and I was trying to get back home, and I felt this overwhelming sense of wanting to rectify anything that I did wrong. And I wanted to just spread love to everyone that I had done wrong to. And I remember writing, some very strong emotional emails to his son during that time. And there was neighbors that Richard and I, the whole neighborhood, sometimes had problems with these particular neighbors. they could be the most generous, really kind people, but they could also be um, kind of a thorn to a person's side, because they would do things that they should not have done without permission, since they were neighbors, and they would sometimes encroach, and it would there were other, just little stupid things. But I remember getting in fights with them from time to time, and I I emailed them, and I didn't tell them what had happened. I just kept that to myself. It wasn't something I could talk about at that time. And but I said, I'm really, really sorry for any fights or anything that have ever gone on between us. And I meant it with all my heart. And they responded, and with a kind email wanting to say the same. They're spiritually minded people. A little bit, sometimes people would kind of think of them as a little bit of phony new age, but they were grounded in spiritual principles, and I knew that. And oh, that's weird. I guess because of the hot weather, there's these little flying gnats flying all around. Oh, great. You might be able to see them. They're coming around me too. That's kind of weird. But anyway, it's a really warm day today. Unseasonably warm, because we've been having very cold weather with rain back a few weeks ago, and today it feels like in the middle of June. Um, but getting back, and I made the sincere apology, and I'm really glad I did. And there were a few other people that I wanted to somehow just spread this love that I was feeling. And on retrospect, it's been 3 months since I went through, it's been 3 months since Richard passed. And when I felt this love of wanting to rectify things and make things right, including the guy that drove Richard and me completely crazy at times. And Richard, so many times, had said, "There's got to be a way where I can get rid of this guy." And he's one of our tenants, who had been here for maybe 13, 14, 15 years. And he was a nice guy in the beginning. But the last 5 years, he was very mean. He was mean to me. He was mean to Richard, and just mean to our dog, which one of the main reasons why Richard got mad at him was not just getting nasty with me, but he didn't like that he was causing problems with our dog and telling him, "Get out of here." I mean, it was just ridiculous, because he had a dog, a border collie. Schmickles is part border collie, and Schmickles loves dogs, and he just wanted to play with his dog. And Rico was very strict about keeping his dog confined. It was like he didn't want his dog to have any playtime, and it just seemed like he was angry all the time. He was an angry person. And when I after Richard passed, and as I said, I was still in Maui. This was like the third or fourth day, and I was crying, but also feeling this love inside of my heart, uh, a kind of love that I had not really experienced too often in my life. Um, and I remember calling him, and I was crying on the phone and leaving a message. He didn't answer. I was crying, and I said, "Rico, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. We're going to get through this." And I said, "Richard, he's not with us, but we're all family here, and we're gonna get through this. And it was a heartfelt message. He never got back. He never called back. He never said, "I'm really sorry about Richard passing." Just nothing, you know. And I thought, well, that's Rico, but um, I felt good about leaving that message all the same. And Rico was the kind of person that would mock me behind my back, make fun of me, say nasty things about me. And I think he shared those views with Brett, Richard's son, who probably, you know, joined in the fun of mocking me. I don't know. Um, because Brett kind of showed his true colors when I left, and I'm not going to go into that, but it was not positive. Let's just put it that way. It was not a good feeling. It was like a feeling that he resented me, um, just because I was with his dad. That for that reason alone, um, and that goes back a long, long way ago. Even though there were times when Brett and I definitely were on the same page and got along and had great talks together about literature and poetry. There was that. And I cling to that, and I want to hold on to those good moments with him, to those positive um, conversations with him. And even when his father, before I left, the first episode that happened, Brett and I, this is what really killed, you know, it just surprises me. Because Brett and I were working hand in hand together to try to help Richard, you know, either get an appointment in with a cardiologist. And we both went to the French hospital and we wanted to make this appointment with the doctor. And we were both kind of working together on this. And I'm holding on to those thoughts, not the negative ones, but the positive ones. And this is what I mean by after Richard passed, I'm not the same person anymore. I feel like I might have not been the, you know, all that I could be, as the cliche puts it, like in the military or something. I don't mean it that way, but there's this saying of, you know, how do you become, how do you call upon the better angels of yourself? How do you become a better version of yourself? And I didn't try to become that. It just happened spontaneously after Richard passed. And so I left this message with Rico, and I'm really, really glad I did, because the strangest thing happened. After Richard passed, November 1st, Rico passed, exactly a month after Richard passed. Richard passed November 1st. It's documented as the 2nd, but I believe he passed in the middle of the night sometime on November 1st. And Rico passed on a full moon in December, early December, on a full moon, like probably around December 2nd or December 3rd, almost the same time that Richard passed, only a month later. And I feel like that I left him with a loving message before he died. And I didn't get a chance to talk to him when he died. He was still alive when I came back from Maui. I came back November 20th, and Rico died around, as I said, December 2nd or so. And I don't know what the connection is that Rico and Richard might have had, but that is just an interesting timeline, that Richard passed first and then Rico a very month later. But I'm just the upshot of what this is about. Like, how did how did, by Richard passing, how did you become a better version of yourself? And I'm not saying that I'm that way all the time. I'm not like going around singing, the Beatles song, "Love is all you need," and peace, love, and everything's organic. I'm not. I mean, I have my very dark night of the soul uh, periods and cycles. But I believe that that love that I felt was coming from Richard, because when a soul is liberated from their physical body, all the all the anger, all the bitterness, all the ridiculous arguments, all the conflicts is buried in that grave. And what's left is your pure self of God's love, your the divinity of yourself, the the soul that is eternal, the soul that is God's love. And I think that he was sharing that unconditional love with me. And I felt it. I felt it really strongly. And I still feel it. And I don't get angry like I used to. I used to, if someone rubbed me the wrong way, I'd get that irritated feeling inside of me, that, that, that you feel, and you want to latch out. I honestly, and there have been times when I had every right to be upset. Something would go wrong, and um, I could easily get a little bit, triggered, if you will. And I don't feel that anymore. I feel like it's not in my heart, and not worth that kind of energy to go there. And I've been trying to convey that in previous videos, that something inside of me changed, and I'm not the same person. And I'm glad I'm not the same person, because the older part of myself, the part that you could say before Richard died, and then after Richard passed, before Richard passed, I was just kind of doing my own thing and thinking about myself and what I wanted to accomplish, and just going through the motions at times. And um, if Schmickles went off and disappeared, I immediately went into a panic, and I'd get upset and angry, and not so much angry, but just that feeling where I felt like things were out of control. And now I realize you just take it day by day and try to stay calm in this light of love. And I think Richard is passing that on to me. And the other day, as I was saying, I look for signs. Today I was so grateful because because I'm always telling Richard, give me any sign at all, or if you can't pass on thoughts to me, or can't appear in my dreams, then give me any sign of all. And I have been seeing these signs on the clock. Like I said in my video last night, sometimes I'll see 111 come up, and I'll look at the clock exactly when it's 111. Now, is that a coincidence? I don't think so. And last night I was a little, nervous, because it was the first probate hearing, which was no big deal. It it was interesting because I got to see how everything changed, and I kind of was talking to Richard in my mind, saying, "Boy, Richard, now you could be a practicing lawyer. You know why? Because you don't even have to show up in court anymore. Everything can be done online. So, and he would have loved that because he was a computer nerd, and if he could work whatever he had to work out online, that was his way. And so we were there, and all it was just an acknowledgement of the judge approving the will to move forward with the probate process. It took like 2 minutes. But I didn't know. I had no idea exactly what was going to happen. And I took Schmickles with me. Schmickles thought he was going back on a flight because it's similar. You have to go through and they check in your bag, and, it's almost just like you're going on a flight to go into a courtroom now. And, I was sitting there, and it happened very, very quickly. And I just, I don't know, where was I going with that? I forgot my train of thought. But I guess I was just thinking about the numbers. And last night I was a little nervous. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if the judge was going to ask any questions. And my lawyer told me several times it's not going to be like that. It's just going to be a stamp of approval, and that's going to be it. And so I was relieved, before I went in, because he sort of said, "There's nothing really here to worry about. There's not going to be questions and all of that." But still, I was a little nervous, and I woke up and looked at the clock, and it was 4:22, and I saw that 22 number, which is very significant because that's Richard's birthday. And that kind of gave me a feeling like, okay, Richard, you're with me on this. And then later, I saw in earlier in the middle, because I wake up a lot during the night, and I woke up and I looked at the clock, and it was 1:01. So that was a double one. And then I saw in the kitchen later on this afternoon, when I got home, I looked over and I was getting Schmickles' dinner ready, and it wasn't like something told me, look at the clock. I just turned my head and I looked at the clock on the oven, and it said 1:11. And I just felt this, this gratitude, like, thank you for giving me some kind of sign, that you're with me. Because if I can't get any communication in any other way right now, that at least is something to hold on to. And it is I don't think it's a coincidence. And the 1:11 is really special. Any triple number is an numerology, which Richard studied very, very seriously. Any triple number is an angelic number, but especially for some reason 1:11. That one is like, you're on the right path. Your guardian angels are guiding you. Don't worry. Keep your focus and stay aware, and we've got your back is kind of a way of putting it. And so that's the message I wanted to say today, that sometimes when our loved ones pass, I don't know how many people have felt, not, it's not just that you're in deep sadness and grieving, But I think for me, I also felt changed. I felt like I had a near death experience, and I didn't. It was just that going through the experience of losing my life companion, my beloved life companion, was kind of like equal to a near death experience, and that I felt this overwhelming unconditional love. And it's still with me, but I go through cycles. As I said, I go through cycles of the dark night of the soul, and then I also feel this beautiful love. And I think when I do feel that beautiful unconditional love, I know it's coming from him, and I know that is the best proof of all that he's with me. So if anybody's going through that experience and you feel frustrated because people talk about, you'll see them in your dreams, or you'll get messages, or you'll get a feeling on your back, or you'll see feathers, or you'll see birds. If you're not experiencing any of that, don't feel frustrated, because if you can just in your heart feel their love, that's enough in itself. Okay, thank you. Thank you for listening, and see you on the next video. Bye-bye.